The film begins with a talk show where the host is interviewing Nam-soo, a well-known investigative reporter famous for his TV show. But during the interview, the director of the show interrupts and cancels it. He reveals that Nam-soo's investigations were fake, and many accusations have been made against him. To protect the company's image, the director immediately fires Nam-soo. A year later, we see Nam-soo being approached by the same TV show that had suspended him. At first, he refuses the offer, but the director persuades him, explaining that this time he'll be hosting a ghost show, investigating haunted locations. Struggling financially after being out of work for a year, Nam-soo reluctantly agrees to take the job. Nam-soo goes to the director's office, where he is shown a lot of story ideas. An assistant is introduced to him to help with the work. Nam-soo goes through many files, but he doesn't like any of the stories. Then, he comes across an old diary. As he reads the pages of the diary, he discovers that it tells the story of a hospital where a girl named Sua was forcibly kept and tortured. He then decides to visit the hospital for his new project to uncover the truth. The next day, Nam-soo visits the hospital with his crew. There, they begin shooting some jump scare videos to thrill the audience. Moments later, an unidentified man suddenly snatches the camera and runs off. However, he quickly stumbles and loses consciousness. The crew then discovers that the man's entire body has been severely burned, so they rush him to the hospital. At the hospital, Nam-soo notices a tattoo on the man's body, which is also depicted in the diary. As he rereads the diary, he realizes that the man is Dong-sik, a nurse who once worked at the mental facility and had also helped Sua. When Nam-soo begins questioning him about the diary, Dong-sik becomes visibly anxious, and his heart rate monitor starts beeping rapidly. The next day, Nam-soo's assistant informs him that she has conducted some investigation, which confirms that Dong-sik did indeed work as a nurse at the mental hospital. She also adds that the cause of the fire at the facility remains unknown, and there is very little information available about it. After this, Nam-soo searches the internet to find more information about Sua. He discovers that on the day of the incident, a prominent figure named Byung-ju died, and the entire country was mourning his death, which caused the case to go unnoticed. During his investigation, Nam-soo learns that before Byung-ju's death, his wife had passed away, and on the day of her death, Byung-ju's daughter Sua killed him. After killing her stepfather, Sua was arrested, but due to her unstable mental condition, she was sent to a mental asylum, where she is still undergoing treatment. The next day, Nam-soo visits Sua at the mental hospital and tries to speak with her. He shows her the diary and asks about it, but she doesn't respond. He then gives her his contact card and leaves. Nam-soo asks his assistant to gather all the files related to the case because he wants to review them. He has a feeling that Sua did not kill her father. The next day, his assistant brings the files, and Nam-soo goes through them. From the files, he discovers that Chief Byung-ju was Sua's stepfather, and her biological father died when she was young. Nam-soo then visits Sua again for an interview. He asks her to share her story about why she killed her father. At first, she refuses to speak, but after Nam-soo persuades her, she agrees to tell her story. Sua says that one day, while she was on her way somewhere, she was suddenly attacked by some people who kidnapped her. After that, they took her to a mental asylum. Later, the hospital director, Hyung-sik, informs Sua that she is insane and has been admitted to the institution for treatment. Sua denies this, insisting she is not insane, and pleads to be released. However, the nurses mercilessly beat her and force her to take heavy doses of medication. Among the staff, there is a kind-hearted nurse named Dong-sik. One day, when he visits Sua's room to give her medicine, she seizes the chance to ask for his help. Dong-sik admits he knows she isn't insane, but confesses that he cannot help her even if he wants to. Desperate, she writes a phone number on a piece of paper and begs him to contact it. While they are speaking, another nurse notices their interaction, startling both of them. Panicked, Dong-sik quickly leaves without responding. She stayed in the hospital for several days and met a mad woman named Mi-ro. Sua also went to the doctor to ask for help, but the doctor told her to take her medicine on time so that she could recover quickly and be discharged. After this, Nam-soo investigated the doctor of the hospital and discovered that the doctor and Chief Byung-ju were very good friends. As his investigation continued, he made a shocking discovery. There was no record of a patient named Kang Sua ever being admitted to the facility. He also learned that before Sua's mother's death, all of her property had been transferred to Byung-ju. There were several allegations about the mental hospital, but because Byung-ju was a chief police officer, he always covered it up and defended the facility. The next day, Sua tells the rest of the story. She tells him that one day there was a man in the room next to hers who knew the way out. When she asked the man for the way out, he told her that there is a secret door in the doctor's room through which she can easily escape from the hospital. But he will tell the password to Sua only when she meets him alone. In the next scene, it is shown that the head of the hospital would call Miro to his room, pretending to give her treatment, but he would rape her. At the same time, Nam-soo's assistant finds out that a woman had once filed a case against the hospital, but it was covered up with Byung-ju's help. The next day, Nam-soo visits the woman at her house. She tells him that admitting her father to that hospital was the biggest mistake of her life. She says the hospital staff removed her father's kidney during surgery without permission. She explains that she filed a case, but the police came to her house and threatened her. They called her case a lie and it was dismissed. She had no choice but to give up. Nam-soo becomes more interested in the case and decides to interview Kang Sua again. Sua tells him that one day she asked Dong-sik if he had called the number she gave him. Dong-sik admitted that he hadn't, explaining that if the doctor found out, he would kill them both. Determined to escape at any cost, Sua approached the man in the room next to hers for help. However, the man began to harass her physically. When Sua asked him for the password to the doctor's door, he told her the password. Immediately after, Sua attacked him. The man started bleeding, and at that moment, all the nurses and the doctor rushed to the scene, creating a distraction. Taking advantage of the commotion, Sua ran to the doctor's door. She quickly entered the password the man had given her, but discovered it was wrong. Just then, Miro approached her and asked what she was doing. Sua asked if Miro knew the password, and Miro used her hands to show it to her. Sua entered the new password, opened the door, and went into the room. Inside the room, Sua discovered a hidden hole behind a cupboard and climbed down through it. By the time the doctor arrived, he saw her escaping, but it was too late. She had already gotten out. However, as she fled, the hospital security spotted her and began chasing her. Desperate, Sua ran until she came across a police car and begged them for help. To her shock, the police put her in the car and took her back to the same hospital. Sua realized it was all her father's doing, as he was the police chief and the officers were acting under his orders. In the present, Nam-soo meets his director and shares the details of the case. The director, intrigued by its potential, gives Nam-soo permission to feature it on their show, noting that such a high-profile case could boost their show's popularity. The next day, Nam-soo goes to the hospital to meet Dong-sik, only to find out that Dong-sik has escaped from his ward. Later, when Nam-soo visits Sua for another interview, she refuses, frustrated by having to repeat the same story so many times. Nam-soo is unsure of what to do, but after much thought, he decides to broadcast his show on television. During the show, he reopens the case and tells his audience about Kang Sua's story and Chief Byung-ju's horrifying deeds. Nam-soo's show immediately captures public attention, and reporters from various channels arrive at the hospital to interview Sua. However, Sua firmly refuses to speak to any reporter, stating that she will only talk to Nam-soo. The next day, Sua calls Nam-soo herself for an interview after seeing his show. She wants to tell him the truth. She reveals that Dong-sik had called the number, which belonged to her boyfriend, and he had been searching for her in every hospital for months. One night, when the doctor was about to remove Sua's organs, her boyfriend arrived at the hospital, looking for her. There, he saw Byung-ju, who had come to meet the doctor. Later, he met Dong-sik, who took him to Sua. Her boyfriend rescued her, and they tried to run away together. However, the doctor and his men caught them and tortured them both terribly. The doctor brutally beats Dong-sik, injuring him severely. and then makes an incision on Sua's boyfriend's stomach, preparing to remove his organs. At that moment, Miro begins to play with fire, lighting candles in the director's office. Suddenly, the entire office catches fire. The flames quickly spread, creating chaos throughout the building. The head doctor of the hospital rushed to his office to save the records, but he was caught in the fire, burned, and fell unconscious. As Miro passed by Sua, she called out to her and asked for help. Miro quickly untied Sua's ropes and they began running away. While they were escaping with her boyfriend, the doctor suddenly emerged from the flames, dragging her boyfriend back into the fire. He died on the spot, and Sua managed to escape from the hospital. Nam-soo initially believes that Sua's story is fake, and pressures her to tell the truth about why she killed her father. To protect herself, Sua begins to cry and confesses that her stepfather was a cruel man who would beat her mother and herself. He also sexually abused her many times. However, Sua insists that she didn't actually kill him. She explains that when she escaped from the hospital and returned home that night, her stepfather had already committed suicide. After hearing Sua's story, Nam-soo is convinced of her innocence. The next day, he reveals the entire story of Sua on his show. Nam-soo shares with the world how her stepfather abused her and had her forcibly committed to a mental hospital. Later, when the case is reopened in court, Sua is declared innocent due to the lack of evidence against her, and the hospital is immediately ordered to discharge her. After the court's ruling, Nam-soo goes to the hospital to pick up Sua. Once he picks her up, he drives her to the front of her house. It is then that Sua's attitude has changed. She shows Nam-soo her diary and pen and asks him if he knows one thing. Patients in mental asylums are not given pens because they are sharp objects. Nam-soo doesn't understand what she means at first, and then a flashback begins to unfold. Actually, the story Sua told was not true. It wasn't her, but her mother who was forced into the mental hospital by her father, who wanted to take her property. The story Sua had shared was about her mother, and there was indeed organ smuggling happening at that hospital. It wasn't her boyfriend who came to save her. It was she who went to save her mother. But the doctor dragged her mother into the fire, causing her mother's death. This made Sua incredibly angry, and when she saw her stepfather running away from the hospital, she realized it was all his doing. When she reached home, she shot and killed him. Later, she wrote the diary and sent it to the news channel, hoping that the events would be investigated further, and she might be proven innocent. In the final scene of the film, Sua prepares 2 cups of tea at her house, knowing that Nam-soo would eventually come to meet her. Then, the doorbell rings, and the film ends beautifully.